I think the most important thing that any investor can do is come to know himself or herself. I think further, the greatest risk any investor faces is conveniently located to the left of his or her right ear and to the right of his or her left ear. I define investments as an allocation of capital with the expectation of the probability of making a suitable rate of return. I consider speculation the taking of substantial risk in anticipation of the possibility rather than the probability of outside returns. I have been for most of my life both a speculator and an investor. I did it backwards from my point of view. I was a speculator first and an investor later. I got away with it. I was extremely lucky. I worked extremely hard. Most people, I think, should invest before they speculate, but of course, the choice is theirs. I think people are crazy not to own gold. I'm not saying it has to go up, but I am saying that if you look at the value proposition around savings and investment instruments denominated in fiat, and you don't feel the need to insure, that you look at the world very differently than me. I own a lot of gold. I hope it goes down in price, not up. The things that make the gold price do well does deleterious things to my lifestyle. My lifestyle's very good, thank you. I regard it as an insurance asset. I also note that if the gold price went from 16 and change to 23 or 24, I wouldn't be a seller. If the gold price went from 16 and change to 15 and change, I'd be a buyer. It's actually in my interest to see the gold price lower. I know that less patient people would feel differently, but that's their problem. I also note that the industry on a net present value, using the strip price and the spot price as the valuation metric, is the lowest relative to enterprise value in my career, which is to say, not only is the gold price attractive to me, but the gold companies are showing a newfound interest in efficiency that I've never seen before in my career, which makes them better buys. Finally, the industry is underestimated in exploration and development for about 30 years. And those lucky juniors or skilled juniors that come on a tier one asset will be able to sell those assets for eye-popping prices to majors that are in effect liquidating their reserves. On the silver side, I would suggest that it's a speculator's metal, and I'm a speculator, so I like it too. I don't like it as much as gold because I've already achieved what I need to achieve through speculation. In my life, gold needs to establish the primary trend before silver responds. Silver is a late cycle responder. It tends to move further and faster when it moves. I would also note that the population of real silver stocks is so small that when the money from the general equities community flows into the silver narrative, there literally is not enough market cap to contain it. Doug Casey describes the result as attempting to siphon Hoover Dam through a garden hose. I've experienced this several times in my career, and I'm looking forward at age 69 to experiencing it one more time. I've lived through now 10 5-year cycles in my life, and I've learned that 5 years is a reasonable expectation to make real money. Compounding is the first wonder of the investing world, particularly in speculation. What I have learned is that making money in speculation, in exploration, is really about answering a series of unanswered questions. And it isn't about just answering one, it's about answering 3 or 4. If you assume that every unanswered question requires a new field season, you have to go through 3 or 4 or more field seasons. It doesn't mean that you have to own the stock for 5 years. In fact, if you discover that your expectations were wrong, that it is unlikely that you're going to get a yes answer, you must sell the stock, whether or not you are up or down on it. But my experience, and I've done some pretty serious work backtesting the 10 baggers, the 1,000% gains that I've enjoyed over my life. The median 10 bagger has required between 5 and 6 years. And by the way, the median 10 bagger, at least once in the course of holding it, has fallen by 50% or more in terms of price. So in addition to being patient, you have to be very persistent. On the beta side of the business, that requires time too. Natural resource-based businesses, commodity-based businesses are capital-intensive and cyclical. And they're a trap for somebody with conventional thinking. During periods of time when commodity prices are high and cash flows are high, earnings are high, very often the company's price-earnings ratios are low. And we're taught to think that low PE companies are valuable companies. But if the low PE is a consequence of abnormally high commodity prices, what happens is that commodity prices self-correct, meaning that you're setting yourself up for a trap where commodity prices collapse. What you need to do as a beta chaser, as an investor in natural resources, and this is really hard to do, you need to buy commodities that are so deeply out of favor that the industry is in or close to in liquidation. If you find a commodity where the global production cost is higher than the median price received for the commodity, you have a circumstance where either that commodity price goes up or the commodity itself becomes unavailable to consumption. The turnaround, the time required for the market to work and the commodity to rise in price isn't something that happens in a quarter or a half or a year. In order to play this game, you very often need 3 to 5 years to be right. But normally, the time frames required in either investing or speculating exceed the time frames that most people who are practitioners feel comfortable with. That's just the fact of life. It's important to note among the juniors that they're really a minefield. I have made, by my standards, an insane amount of money in the juniors. But I've taken insane risk, and I've worked very, very, very hard. If you were to merge every junior mining company in the world, listed junior mining company in the world, the American listings, the Canadian listings, the London listings, the Australian listings, if you merged them all, maybe 2,500 companies into one company, called that company Junior Explore Co. In a good year, that company would only lose $2 billion. That is to say, expenditures over receipts. In a bad year, it would lose $6 or $7 billion. So when you look at the sector as a whole, what are you willing to pay for a business that loses $2 billion a year? Should you pay 6 times losses? 10 times losses? In a bull market, you might have to pay 15 times losses. That hides the fact that probably 5% of the issuers generate so much performance that they add legitimacy and occasionally luster to a sector that can be counted on destroying capital year after year after year. The point of all this is that if you're not going to do the work, don't